What's up guys, Matt Laidlaw here from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. So I want to talk to you guys about a new model that Harley-Davidson just launched this morning, March 4th. This is the brand new Electra Glide Standard. Now the Electra Glide Standard isn't a new model that Harley-Davidson hasn't done in the past. This is a bike that was a staple in the lineup in the early 2000s, and they discontinued it in 2010. So they had an Electra Glide Standard last year in 2009. Which I just did a ultra limited video that I talked a little bit about the Electra Glide Standard. But anyways, so this is pretty much your stripped down Electra Glide. And so this is an FLHT, and I think one of the primary objectives from Harley-Davidson in making this model is to get a fairing modeled bike at a really low price point. It's at $18,999. I mean, this is even less expensive than the Road Kings. So really low price point to get yourself into a touring platform bike. So let me jump into some of the details on this bike and kind of clear up some of the questions that I'm already seeing being populated on social media and in different chat rooms and things like that. So a lot of guys are saying, wow, this is just a stripped down street glide. And there are some similarities. If I had to choose a bike that this bike was most closely related to, I probably would pick the street glide. But let me jump into some of the differences between this bike, the Electra Glide Standard, and the street glide. So first off, let's take a look at the wheels. So this is a 17 front wheel, and they call this the Impeller Wheel. This is the same wheel that you're going to find on the other Electra Glides, like your Limited and the Electra Glide Classic. So you have a 16-inch wheel in the rear, so 17 in the front, 16 in the rear. The fender, however, is the same as like a street glide, so it's pretty much your bare raw fender with no light trim and everything, which is a difference from the Electra Glides of old. So I actually have a couple pictures of the 2009 Electra Glide Standard that I'll flash up here on the screen. But the 2009 Electra Glide had lights and some trim on the fender and everything. So that is one thing that the Street Glide and the Electra Glide Standard do have in common. As far as graphics and everything, you've got a very simple just bar and shield graphic on the tank, no frills. Saddlebags, standard depth saddlebag, much like the Street Glide Standard. We all know the Street Glide Special has the extended saddlebags. Yeah, you got chrome on the motor, so no blacked out features there. Let's drop down a little bit. So one of the big things about the Electra Glide Standard is you have absolutely no radio in this bike at all. The inner fairing shell here is the same as an Electra Glide Standard police bike, basically. So it's dull. It's not the gloss black on the inside, much like the Street Glide Special is. The Standard is dull. But you have a kind of this big glove box, which in my opinion isn't really functional because it's open here. And so if you stuck anything in there, as you rolled down the road, it would just fly out. But you basically have this big cavity here. You do have the little jukebox area to the right of the hole here where your cell phone is usually connected to a USB on other like Street Glide models. You do not have any speakers in this bike. That is a big question that I get asked a lot so far is, are the speakers already in there? The answer is no. However, one of the questions I made sure to ask the development team of this bike is if this bike is ready to go and pre-wired with the wiring harness to accept the 6.5 GTS system, and the answer is yes. Everything's all pretty much wired, so everything as far as the electrical is all good to go to put the infotainment system in here and the speakers as well. But right now there's no audio equipment in there whatsoever. So you do have just a solo saddle as well. The Street Glides, you have a 2-up seat, and I did a little digging because I recognize this saddle. It is part of a P&A item that Harley-Davidson has right now. This is the seat right here. If you were to go into Harley-Davidson's parts and accessory catalog, it's called the low profile solo touring seat, and this thing retails for about $300. The picture here shows you have the with the accompanying low profile passenger pillion as well. That's $200. So if you wanted to buy this bike and get a 2-up riding setup and have everything kind of match, this is the seat you're going to want to get right here. This is the part number here, 524000141. So yeah, this is the seat that comes on the Electra Glide Standard. So if you want to kind of read about it a little bit, it's in the touring catalog here. Now you've got the Milwaukee 8. It's 107 cubic inch. You do not have the option of getting a 114 on this bike. So once again, one more thing to kind of solidify this is your very basic Electra Glide here. The graphics on the tank are they're painted on as opposed to the decal on the Street Glide. In the Street Glide you have this adhesive decal on there. The other thing on a Street Glide, this is a Street Glide now, I switched over. The Street Glide, you have the 19-inch Enforcer wheels on the front. The Street Glide Special, you have that 19-inch Talon wheel. So the wheels in the front on the Street Glides are 2 inches larger than the Electra Glide. And then the Street Glide rear wheel is a 16 inch as well. On the Street Glide Specials, you got an 18-inch wheel, Talon wheel. A little bit different wheel size, which, yeah, it plays the bigger sidewall and the rubber plays a little bit of a factor in the comfort level of the ride quality. You have a little bit more cushion there as opposed to the 19-inch. Not a huge difference, but still a difference nonetheless. The headlight here, you've got a dual halogen bulb headlamp, and that's the same as the Street Glide. You do not get LEDs from the factory on the Street Glide. That's usually a big point of contention. A lot of people think that you should. Here's another really small, subtle difference that I don't think very many people are going to pick up on. On the Street Glide, you've always had color-matched latches on the saddlebags. This Electra Glide Standard, you got the chrome. So if I go back to the Street Glide here, you can see here the latch is always color matched. Not a big deal, but I thought I'd bring it up anyways. Another difference here on the Electra Glide Standard is you have the taller windshield. So I believe this is a 10-inch windshield. It's a clear windshield. On the Street Glide, of course, you have the short smoked windshield. I'll go to the tail section here. So in the tail section, you've got the tail light, much like your Electra Glides. On the Street Glide, you have just the 2 bullet turn signals. So just the 2 bullet turn signals. Really, overall, just generally speaking, the Street Glide has more of those like less is more sporty features, whereas the Electra Glide doesn't have necessarily like the really small, sleek features. Here's another one that I'm talking about. In the Street Glide, you have the mirrors that are mounted on the inner fairing there. That's always kind of been a trademark of the Street Glide for a long time. And on your Electra Glide Standard, the mirrors are on the handlebars here. So one more just kind of subtle difference there. You do have cruise control as a standard option, but you do not get ABS as a standard option on this bike. It is upgradable. It's $795 for the ABS on this bike. And you cannot get the stereo from the factory. So I know a lot of people are going to ask, well, if I pay a little bit more money, can I get this bike with the GTS infotainment system? The answer is no. This bike only comes one way. Really, the only option you have on this motorcycle is with or without ABS. There are no color options. There are no radio options. Cruise control since 2014 model year has always been standard. Here's your little cruise control toggle right there. So cruise is always standard on the touring bikes nowadays. So here's your mirrors that I was telling you about earlier. The gauges are a little bit different. So the gauges, they're a black background, whereas on the Street Glide, you've got the white. You can kind of see there it's white. Again, subtle difference, but a difference. And you can see here on the Street Glide, like I mentioned, you got the 2-up seat on there as well. Yeah, I think kind of Harley-Davidson, like I said, Harley-Davidson's main objective here is to get a really low-priced touring bike. I think there's been a lot of talk online. I read a lot of people's comments online in various forums and chat rooms and everything else, social media. And a lot of people criticize Harley-Davidson for their pricing. And yeah, they are expensive bikes. I'm not going to deny that. But you know what? You get what you pay for, like most things in life. But this is a way that Harley-Davidson has kind of taken a step of that direction to facilitate buying these bikes at a lower price point. So I think a lot of people are going to be happy. A couple things I'll mention as well is right now in the Electra Glide lineup, or in the touring bike lineup, you have several Electra Glides, right? So you have the Electra Glide Ultra Classic, you have the Ultra Limited Low, and then you have the Ultra Limited. So right now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Electra Glides, right? Which, by the way, guys, just a little piece of history. Electra Glide, it got its name in the mid 1960s when they put an electric start on these bikes. So the Electra Glide name came from when they first put an electric starter on here as opposed to a kickstart. But anyways, that's just a side note. But right now, so there's 4 Electra Glides. Harley-Davidson has already told us they are discontinuing 2 of these. The Electra Glide Ultra Classic was discontinued mid-model year, so you're going to see some of the 19s out there, but really I don't think anything was produced after January 1st. And then the Ultra Limited Lows have been discontinued as well. So yeah, they started off at the beginning of the 19 model year, which is why they're still listed as a 2019 model year bike, but you cannot get, well, there's still some floating around out there, but they're not producing them anymore. At the beginning of next model year, you definitely won't see these. So right now, the only bikes that are in production are the Ultra Limited, and now this Electra Glide Standard. So Harley-Davidson has told us that this bike will roll out to dealers immediately. This isn't a bike they're announcing a year or two in advance like their adventure bike and their street fighter bike. This is a bike that you will start to see on dealership showroom floors as early as like a week from now, maybe even sooner. So we will definitely see these bikes available in the immediate future. So if you're looking for one of these bikes, you don't have to wait very long. They're already built. They're waiting to be shipped out to the dealerships as we speak. So we will see these bikes very, very soon. We are taking, Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson is taking deposits right now for these bikes. So if you're interested in one, please contact me or a member of our team at Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson, and we can put your name on one. As of making this video, they've only been announced now for about 3 hours or so. So yeah, hit us up and let us know. Once again, you can only get it in black, and they're not going to change that this model year. They will probably change that next model year though, where they'll start introducing more colors other than just black on this bike. Let me go here first. So yeah, Milwaukee 8, no 114 available, real minimalist technology. No speakers, no radio, although you can upgrade that. I believe the GTS infotainment system is around like $1,800 if you want to pick that up, and then speakers are probably $200-300, something like that. So it's probably going to cost you after installation, I would guess with labor, somewhere around $2,500 or so. Don't quote me on that, but probably around $2,500 or so to get the radio installed. So I don't know, in my opinion, if you want, you want the stereo, then I mean you probably get better value in just getting a Street Glide. Something I did not mention is the suspension. So the suspension on this bike is the same as the Street Glides, and that's another thing that's different from the Electra Glide Standard of old. The old Electra Glide Standards that they were offered in the early 2000s, they came with the full height ride suspension that you got on the other Electra Glides. So this is the same as the Street Glide, and I'm not sure why they showed the right-hand side of the shock. This is kind of just like a place filler shock. The shock that actually does all the work that's adjustable is on the left side of the bike. Surprised they showed a picture of the right side. Anyways, yeah, so you have the ride height of a Street Glide, which me personally, I would have preferred if they put the Electra Glide shocks or the Road King shocks on this bike. That's just my personal preference because I'm tall and I like to get the benefit of the full travel of the suspension, but they accomplished a lower seat height with this shock on here, so more people can get on this bike. They say here the 49 millimeter dual bending valve suspension. So this is a suspension that came out in the 2017 model year when they launched the Milwaukee 8. This is really good, guys. I can't say enough good things about the Showa dual bending front suspension on these bikes. It works extremely well, and it's definitely better than the previous generation shocks. It really helps keep that the rubber in contact with the road, and it really has a really nice controlled rebound was the biggest thing that shock did. And it kind of is a chameleon where it adapts depending on the type of shock that the front end is experiencing, and it kind of tailors the shock absorption based on the amount of shock that the front end is receiving. So let's jump into the specs and pricing. So once again, Vivid Black, it's about 19 grand. ABS is $795. Security is standard. I should have brought that up, I guess, because yeah, the security system is standard instead of charging you $395 for it. 17-inch front wheel, 16-inch rear wheel. You got the 6-gallon fuel tank. That's been the same since 2008. No difference there. Here's something that I didn't cover. So the weight of the bike is 820 pounds wet, which really isn't much different at all than the Street Glide. I mean, that radio really doesn't account for very much weight at all. So just real quick, power figures. 111 foot-pounds of torque at the crank. At the rear wheel, you're going to get about 103 or so, and about 103 foot-pounds of torque and about 80 horsepower at the rear wheel on these Milwaukee 8s. And the wheels, like I said, they call them the Impeller cast aluminum wheels. These are the same that you're going to find on your Electra Glides and your Ultra Limiteds. A little bit different finish, but yeah, the same wheel design. Brakes are the same as all the other touring bikes. Your 32 millimeter 4-piston fixed front and rear brake. I'm going to do something a little bit different here. So I'm going to jump over to Instagram, and I'm just going to this is a post here on Harley-Davidson's Instagram page. And I just want to look at kind of what people are saying right now. It's always interesting, I think, to look at what kind of the public feedback is on a new bike. So some people are saying, sweet, I dig it. So here's a big misconception that I'm seeing so far from that guy, Alex. I don't get it though. So what about the Street Glide? Yeah, I hope you guys understand some of the differences that I just pointed out between this bike and the Street Glide. Street Glide has a radio and infotainment system and speakers is probably the biggest difference. And then the wheels are completely different, which is pretty significant in my opinion. You know, things from the windshield to the mirrors to just the highlights on the latches for the saddlebags there. The seat is completely different. The graphics on the tank are completely different. But don't get me wrong, they're very similar bikes. And I guess basically your main motivating factor between the two are, hey, are you one of these old school guys, or as Harley-Davidson calls it, are you a purist, a motorcycle purist, and are you not into the whole radio thing? Well, if that's the case, then and you want to save a buck, then yeah, get the Electra Glide Standard. You know, that and the wheels too, you know. These aren't flashy wheels, whereas the Enforcer wheels on the Street Glide, you know, you got a big 19-inch front wheel, so it kind of gives it more of that custom bagger look. Yeah, they are, you know, somewhat similar bikes, but hopefully I've illustrated kind of the differences between the two. That guy Alex, again, something tells me new touring frame is coming in 2020. No, I seriously doubt that, guys. I don't think there's going to be a new frame in 2020. I think touring bikes are up for a change sometime in the next 5 years or so, but it's not going to come next year. Oh, this is a good comment. I'm glad this guy, Law Dog Pound 58, brought this up. This bike does not have the passing lamps up front. So that's something that's different as well from the Electra Glide Standard back in the early 2000s version, is you had the passing lamps. So this bike just has the dual halogen bulb single headlamp up front, much like the Street Glide. So yeah, I wish they would have put the passing lamps on there. I mean, that would have been a higher cost, and you know, really Harley-Davidson was just trying to get the cost down as low as possible on this bike. And so I can see why they didn't put it on there, because cost was, I think, probably at the very top of their priorities when building this bike. I know Harley-Davidson engaged a few other Harley-Davidson dealerships and sought some of their feedback. Yeah, I mean, everything on here is pretty much them, the objective of them getting it as low a price point as possible. And this guy says, wouldn't that just be a Street Glide that sits higher? And the answer is no, it actually sits the same as the Street Glide, because it's the same shocks as the Street Glide. This is cheaper and no infotainment system. Yep. Stripped down Street Glide. Yeah, I guess you could call it a stripped down Street Glide. And then that guy Alex, once again, proof the Street Glide is overpriced. No, the Street Glide Standard, and I guess, you know, being overpriced, that's just kind of your opinion. But the fact of the matter is, things cost money, and really nice motorcycles cost more money. And Harley-Davidson makes really nice motorcycles that are of a higher standard and quality than most all other manufacturers. For the base price of a Street Glide Standard, guys, is like $21,500, and then once you add the bigger, that's the 4.3-inch infotainment system. Once you add the two factory options of the GTS 6.5 GTS system, and you know, your speakers obviously come with that, and when you add the ABS on it as well, I mean, this bike is easily, you know, a Street Glide can be easily as much as $4,000 more than the Electra Glide Standard. So there is a big price differentiation there. And then the Bearded Bastard 89, would have been cool to know about this before I bought my 19 Heritage. How about keeping your customers informed of what you're working on, so we know if we should be waiting for a different bike or not? Or here's an idea: release your whole lineup at once. Get your blank together, Harley. Well, you know what, guys? I don't know a single company in the world that announces the next, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of products ahead of time. If that was the case, then people would wait. I mean, this is a business. You know, maybe a year or two ago, they didn't know that this bike was going to be launched. Actually, I think they said that this bike they've kind of had this bike on the docket for about a year, or in development for a year. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of, you know, innovation here, because a lot of these parts are parts that Harley-Davidson has already had and been in production. But I mean, give me a break. I mean, they're not gonna announce all their stuff ahead of time, so you can pick and choose for the next 5 years of products. So I think a lot of people are happy here with the bike being, you know, just under $19,000. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching the video. I really feel like this bike is gonna fit an empty slot right now in the Harley-Davidson lineup. And a price point that I think a lot of people are wanting, and it's going to be real attractive at this price to a lot of potential people that are looking to get into a touring bike at a relatively low price. So yeah, I'm real excited about it. As soon as I get one of these at the dealership, I'm going to do my full review video on this bike, obviously, and so that probably will be coming out in like a week or two, where I'll have the bike in person and just kind of give it the full review treatment and everything. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'm really curious to hear your guys' opinion on this new motorcycle. Do you think this is a good direction or a good choice for Harley-Davidson to release this bike? Let me know what your guys' opinion is. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.